Okay. That does it for our PFL 7 preview. And now let's hop over to the UFC side of things this weekend. UFC Fight Night, Sandhagen versus Font. Font, I believe, was a last-minute replacement, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, when did that break? Maybe about
supposed to be
10 or so days ago, something like that. So like maybe almost 2 weeks of notice, something along those lines.
Supposed to be
maybe even more. Maybe it was 3 weeks of notice.
It's supposed to be Cory versus Umar.
I know
Magomedov.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It might have come out the week that I wasn't here.
I think that's
so
right.
props to Rob Font for stepping in here. Let's see. Let us start at the very bottom of the card, the opening bout of this fight night in the flyweight division. Ode Osbourne versus Asu Almabaev. I'll just do the undercard ones more quickly. Ode Osbourne, the Jamaican sensation, not bad. 31 years old, out of Wisconsin, 12-5, coming off a win against Charles Johnson. Asu, the 29-year-old, out of Kazakhstan, 17-2 as a pro with 8 submissions. Add 3 knockouts to that. Has not lost a fight since 2017, making his UFC debut. Omar, why don't you start us off?
What was
Yeah,
quick
dude.
about that? That was the same intro you always do.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. I think it's a really interesting fight, man. Ode Osbourne has kind of been a little hot and cold in the UFC. He's had some great performances. He's had some mid performances. But this, I don't really know much about Almabaev. What I do know is his resume is ridiculous. Now, he doesn't have the names attached to his resume, obviously, to show any kind of value. But if you look at the way that he is finishing these fights and completing these fights, whether it's by decision, whether it's by finish, like it just seems like he is putting shit on people. And I think that Ode Osbourne has a tendency to shit the bed when guys are putting things on him, especially if they are more complete than he is. In other words, being able to use the ground game, use the striking game, and things like that. So I have a little bit more confidence in this new up and comer making his debut in this spot, and I'm gonna go with Almabaev, and I think he finishes him. I'm gonna go with second round KO.
Okay.
I don't know who's
Mark,
going, Mike, me or you.
You go.
Should I assume I'm going? All right. Okay, Almabaev is the favorite, minus 195. Ode is plus 155 as the dog. 2 inches of height on the Osbourne side. No reach listed for Almabaev, oddly. But yeah, I guess it's not surprising he's the favorite because he's a real prospect. You'll find him ranked fairly high on some like world flyweight lists. He is 17-2. He's coming over from Brave. He beat Zach Makovsky over there, which says something about his legitimacy if you remember Zach from the UFC. And he gets an interesting test in his debut against Ode because Ode is a skilled guy. He's a bit up and down, as Omar said. I've seen actually that he's been training lately over with the Serra-Longo guys, so that's interesting. I'm sure he is looking to prepare for the wrestling that Almabaev brings. And Osbourne is already pretty good at defending the takedown and scrambling, so if he can do that and keep this thing on the feet, then it's very likely that it ends up going his way. I'm torn on if he can do that, but I think I'm going to land on saying there's just enough control that Almabaev manages to get on the ground to eke this thing out. So I will say it is a UD in his favor.
All right. Let's go on. Let's see.
You didn't pick, Michael.
Oh, my bad. I'm going to go with the up-and-comer, the Phenom, who's 17-2, making his UFC debut, Asu Almabaev. I will say that he gets it done by knockout stunningly in the first round, putting the flyweight division on notice. Okay, in the featherweight division, we have Sean, the Sniper Woodson, taking on Dennis. How do you say his last name?
Wait, I didn't even know that. They found a fight for Sean Woodson? He lost... wait, who do you say he's fighting?
Buzukja?
Buzukja? I mean, it's not Sherdog.
Yeah, that's not... Because he lost 2 different opponents, and I thought he was just done. But I guess they got someone now. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, guy making it.
So
apparently making it's on. I'm checking Sherdog and Wikipedia.
Another debut.
Debuting fighter Dennis
Buzukja.
Buzukja or Buzukja?
I don't know. Out of New York, New York. Look at that.
He's a New Yorker.
He's fighting out of Longo Weidman.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
interesting.
Outside of the UFC, he made his pro debut for Bellator, getting a win for Bellator by knockout in the first round. I don't know why I didn't fight for Bellator ever again. That's kind of weird. Has fights and wins on Ring of Combat, which is a big-time New York promoter. He was on Dana White's Contender Series, Ring of Combat again, Contender Series the second time, and UAE. And most recently, Cage Fury. So all big promotions and a very impressive resume for Dennis. 11-2 as a pro now, 5 finishes. Welcoming him will be Sean Woodson, the Sniper, 31 years old, out of St. Louis, Missouri. 9-1 as a pro. Add 1 draw to that. Coming off of a draw against Luis Saldana. I'm sure this is new to both of you guys, as well as to me, seeing that it's a new fight with Buzukja. But let's throw out some picks. I'll go first. I'll say Woodson turns him away. I'll say by knockout, handing Buzukja his first knockout loss.
I'm not really sure why I'm not totally sold on Woodson yet. He wins. He knows how to win fights. He's beaten Terrence McKinney, obviously. Like I'm not sure why I'm not completely sold on him. I think I'm going to go with Buzukja here. I do like that he fights out along a Weidman. I would imagine he's got a pretty good takedown game, a pretty good striking game as well. Probably pretty well rounded. Looks like he's got a couple finishes on his record as well out of the 11 wins he has. So I'm going to go Buzukja here. I don't think he gets the finish, but I do think he's able to take down Woodson and kind of work a little bit. So I'm going to go with at least 2 rounds out of the 3 for Buzukja.
Yeah, I'm torn. I don't know Buzukja well. I do love that camp. So seeing him have a good record coming out of that camp is pretty encouraging. I'm actually looking quick to see if they even have odds up for this fight. They do. One site. What is it? FanDuel has it. -200 Woodson and +150 Buzukja. Yeah, I kind of want to go with Buzukja. I like that he is hot coming in. I wish that I was a bit more familiar with him, but I think I'm going to stick with Woodson. The size for him is just so much. He's so freaking long. He's got what I just see, like a 7-inch reach advantage in this fight. And he does have skills. I didn't love the way he fought the last fight against Luis Saldana, but before that, he had been looking pretty impressive. So I will say Sean Woodson wins a close decision.
Okay. Let's go over to the...
Omar, I forgot to write you down. You said Buzukja?
Yeah, by UD.
Okay, men's flyweight division. Cody Durden taking on Jake Hadley. Durden, 32-year-old out of Georgia, 15-4 with 1 draw, 3 consecutive wins coming into this weekend. 6 knockouts and 5 submission victories for him. Taking on Jake Hadley. Nickname is White Kong, the 26-year-old out of England, 10-1 with 8 finishes coming off back-to-back wins in the UFC, both of which are finishes. So this fight, going to be fireworks. I'll pick first. I'm going to take Jake Hadley. I think he is the more dynamic and more dangerous guy stepping in there. Yes, this is going to be fireworks, but I think that Jake Hadley is going to be the one having his hand raised in the end. I'll say he gets it done by submission in round 1. Who goes?
Mike, when you finish, toss it to one of us so we can just flow.
Mark.
Okay, Hadley is minus 200. Cody Durden is plus 160. They're the same height. Hadley will have a 3-inch reach advantage, which is a decent amount at flyweight. They are retesting the prospect that is Jake Hadley here. He's put together a couple good wins. He's looked impressive. Now he gets another real test. It was actually supposed to be Tagir Ulanbekov, who also fell off this card. Cody Durden stepped in fairly recently here. But he's still a good test. He's a scrapper. He'll push the pace. He can wrestle, and he can grind. Jake Hadley's going to have to work to keep Cody Durden off of him. When they are separated, I do love the boxing advantage of Jake Hadley. I love the way he mixes it up to the body and head. I do think he can land on Durden. And although I'm a bit torn, I will go with Hadley here. Yes, he struggled with Nascimento in his debut, but Nascimento is definitely a better pure grappler than Durden is. And I think with Durden, Hadley can find enough separation, even if he does get taken down a time or two, to land some big shots. And I will go as far as saying that he finds a finish on a guy who does not really get knocked out. But I will say Jake Hadley, round 3, TKO.
Yeah, I actually think that Durden's going to want to play on the ground a little bit more than I think we might even be expecting him to. And I think that Hadley has... I think Hadley has the ability to submit him. I think that there's going to be probably a nice exchange on the ground. I think both of them are very well-rounded fighters, and I think that they're both going to have their moments rolling around. But I think in the end, I think Jake Hadley is just going to have more control, and I think he's just going to have a little bit more aggression on there, down there. And I think he comes out on top with a submission. So I'm going to go with a second round submission win.
Okay. Moving on to the featherweight division, we have Billy Quarantillo taking on Damon Action Jackson. So Billy Q, 34 years old, out of Tampa, Florida, baby. Represent. 17-5, 13 finishes. Looking to get back at the win column after getting knocked out by Mr. Edson Barboza. He will be standing across from Damon Action Jackson, the 34-year-old out of Dallas, Texas, 22-5 with 1 draw and 1 no contest. 19 finishes, 15 of them submission victories. He's also looking to get back in the win column after getting knocked out by Dan Ige. Omar, start us off.
Ooh, excuse me. So Billy Q actually has come by the gym before, so I can't really pick against Billy Q, I think, at this point. I don't really think it's allowed. So I'm going to stick with Billy Q here, man. The fact is, this is a really good fight. This is probably, I think this is one of the fights on the short list of fight of the night for this event. I think it's going to be a scrap from beginning to end. You know, Billy Quarantillo had a good fight with Edson Barboza up until the moment he got his, face broken and got caught. But it was a good fight. I don't think Damon Jackson has that type of dynamic finishes. But he is definitely a grinder. He's definitely somebody who will work to beat you down. And I think in that kind of a fight, Billy Quarantillo is not easy to put out. I think they're going to be grinding on each other for the entirety of those 3 rounds, and I mean that in the less weird way as humanly possible. But I think Billy Quarantillo is going to edge out this fight, and I think it's going to be a unanimous decision. I go with Billy Q by unanimous decision.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what the odds are for this fight. I would guess. I like guessing.
I will share them.
It's got to be.
If you like.
Okay, sure. Okay, go.
I'm sorry. Let's do that.
I would
No,
guess.
I think it's a pickup fight. I think it's a pickup fight.
Yeah, I think they're very close. I would imagine they're close. What are they?
Not as close as you might imagine. Billy Q minus 180. Damon Jackson plus 145.
Wow.
Oh yeah, that's not what I thought at all.
So competitive, but certainly not a pick 'em.
Well,
Yeah.
I guess that makes me feel good about my pick because I am going to go with Billy Q, baby. I think he's just going to be better on the feet. And he has never been submitted. So even though Damon Jackson's bread and butter is getting his opponent to the ground and working for that submission, I think that Billy Q is going to do what he needs to do to stay out of those hairy situations. And I think he's going to sail to a unanimous decision victory. Mark?
1 inch of height and reach for Damon Jackson here. This is a great matchup. I'm really interested to see what this one looks like. I don't know why it's as low on the card as it is. It feels like it should be over a few of those fights that are on the main card. I think it could be a war potentially. Jackson starts hotter. Billy Q usually tends to start a bit slow, so I expect Jackson to look good out of the gate, but Billy Q is the king of using pace to take over fights late, and I expect he can do that here too. So it's the middle of the fight where this one really feels like it might be up for grabs. And I think what I'm going to guess is just that Billy Q's grappling is good enough to not be controlled for more than a round against the Leech. And I think he'll otherwise be pushing a pace. He's certainly the crisper striker of the two, as you guys have mentioned. And I think he can do enough to take 2 of these. So I will say Billy Q, EUD.
Nice.
Okay. Moving up to the welterweight division, we have Jeremiah Wells taking on Carlston Harris. Jeremiah Wells, 36 years old, out of Pennsylvania, 12-2 with 1 draw, 9 finishes, has not lost a fight since March of 2019. He's on a 6-fight win streak and is undefeated thus far in the UFC, 4-0 in the UFC. Going up against Carlston Harris, the 36-year-old out of Guyana, 18-5 as a pro with 10 finishes, 5 subs, 5 knockouts. Most recently defeated Jared Gooden back in March of this year. He is 3-1 in the UFC. Mark, start us off. Give us a take and pick. Take a pick.
So tight odds here. Jeremiah Wells is minus 135. Carlston Harris is plus 110. 3 inches of height and 2 inches of reach on the Harris side. And I'm honestly a bit undecided on how good I think either of these guys are. So I'm very curious to see who steps up here. I think that the straight power shots from Wells are potentially a big factor here, as they always are. Harris is a bit more fluid of a striker, but he's also a bit open. His grappling is also a threat, but you wonder if Wells is defensively strong enough to mostly keep himself off the ground. So, I don't know. It's a close one, but I think I'm just more willing to trust Jeremiah Wells based on what I've seen up to this point. I'm going to say it's a big straight from him in an exchange where he just beats Harris to the chin and gets a finish. I will say round 2 knockout for Wells.
Omar, go.
I have a little bit more confidence in Harris. I think Harris is a really interesting fighter, carries a lot of power behind him. I think he has submission skills as well. I'm not... Jeremiah Wells, I feel like, is another one, just like... what's this kid's name we were just talking about? Just like Sean Woodson, where I feel like I should be sold on him, but like I'm not yet, and I don't really have a reason why. But Carlston Harris has always struck me as somebody who's got some good skills behind him. So I'm going to ride with Harris for this one. I do think this is a close fight. I thought those odds that you just said were probably very similar to the Billy Q Damon Jackson fight. Or we thought that's what that was. Anyway, I'm going to go with Carlston Harris here. I'm going to say that he is able to put out Jeremiah Wells. I think they get into a bit of a firefight, and I think Harris is able to put him away. I go with the second round KO.
It's an interesting matchup. These guys are the exact same age. Carlston Harris, 3 or 4 inches taller. But I will go with the power of Jeremiah Wells. I think he's going to put Carlston Harris out. I'll say round 3 knockout.
Nice.
Okay. Getting fun here. Going down to the bantamweights, we have my man's back, Kyler Phillips, taking on Raoni Barcelos. Kyler Matrix Phillips, the 28-year-old out of Phoenix, Arizona, 10-2 as a pro, 7 finishes, coming off of a win against Marcelo Rojo back in February of 2022. That was by armbar. Taking on Raoni Barcelos, the 36-year-old out of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. 17-4 as a professional with 10 finishes. He is looking to get back in the win column after getting knocked out by Umar Nurmagomedov back in January of this year. I'll go first because let's just get it out of the way. You know I'm going with my boy, Kyler Phillips, the Steph Curry of MMA. I think he's going to get it done. He's going to say, hey, Bantamweight division, did you miss me? So what happened? He got suspended briefly, didn't he, for like 6 months?
He did.
I think suspended and then hurt, or the other way, something like that.
I think before his at some point, delays. I think before his suspension, he was booked like twice in both of them. I think one time he pulled out with an injury, and another time an opponent had pulled out with an injury. And like next thing you know, the guy hasn't fought in like over a year. Anyhow,
I didn't realize Kyler Phillips and Darius Flowers had both been suspended at the same time for the same shit.
Oh, wow. I didn't either.
Yeah, didn't realize that.
I'll say round 1 knockout, Kyler Phillips. Omar, why don't you go?
I think it's an interesting fight because I think Hani Barcelos has a lot of tools that make him very dangerous. We just haven't really seen the consistency from him to really make him, I think, like an automatic pick, in my opinion, just yet. Kyler Phillips, on the other hand, while he does have a couple losses on his record, I think is a much more dynamic fighter in general, both on the feet and on the ground. Obviously, I think his feet, on the feet and using his hands, I think are more his bread and butter. A lot of spinning attacks, a lot of dexterity in the way he throws his kicks and his punches. I think he's a bit more talented in that aspect. I do think Hani Barcelos probably presents a lot more power, a lot more sort of a bruiser kind of approach to the game at this point, especially if he's not on the ground. I think once it goes down to the ground, he's a lot more of a submission threat, but I don't think that Kyler lets it get to that point. And I think when it's all said and done, I don't know if he knocks out Barcelos, but I do think he puts on a bit of a beating on him. So I'm going to go with Kyler Phillips here by unanimous decision.
All right, Phillips a 2-1 favorite at -200.
Nice.
Barcelos is +170 as the dog. 1 inch of height and 5 inches of reach for Kyler Phillips.
Wow.
And for me, that was my deciding factor in this fight because, as you guys know, I love the skill set of both of these guys. I've always kind of touted Raoni as someone who I thought was a bit underrated. So it's very hard for me to pick against either one of them, but 5 inches of reach for a guy who is as dynamic of a striker as Kyler Phillips is enough to sway me in that direction. So I do think it'll be close. Raoni can do it all. He may look to grapple here, but Phillips is no slouch in that department either. And I think that reach will be enough of a differentiator for him to find the bigger moments in the fight, land some of the bigger shots, and manage to win it on points. Also, Barcelos is 36, and we may be seeing him slow down a bit. I'm not sure yet, but we may. And Phillips is 28 and in his prime. So I will say Kyler Phillips, UD.
Nice. Great pick. Okay, let's go up to the lightweight division
Another one
now.
that feels like it should be on the main card.
Yeah, for sure. Ignacio Bahamondes taking on Ludovit Klein. So Bahamondes, Omar, how do you pronounce his nickname? La Jaula?
La Jaula. It
La
means
Jaula.
the cage.
Oh, baby. The 25-year-old out of Santiago, Chile, 14-4 with 10 finishes, 9 of them knockouts. He is 3-1 in the UFC after winning on Contender Series. Two of those 3 victories in the UFC were finishes. And he'll be standing across from Ludovit, Mr. Highlight Klein, the 28-year-old out of Slovakia. He's 19-4-1 with 16 finishes, coming off of a draw against Jai Herbert. Mark, start us off this time.
Ignacio favored at -220. Ludovit Klein is +180. 8 inches of height and 3.5 inches of reach on the Bahamondes side. 8 inches of height is friggin' monstrous. Klein is a former featherweight who honestly has looked okay since moving up to lightweight, but now he runs into a really tricky size matchup here. And for a guy with the kicks of Bahamondes to be 8 inches taller is going to be a really, really tricky obstacle to overcome for Ludovit Klein. So, he's a tough guy. He's skilled all around. He'll definitely work to get in that phone booth range. I could absolutely see him look to wrestle, which he's been showing more and more. But I got to lean toward Bahamondes. I think he can do enough damage, manage the range, score with the leg kicks, land with the hands even once Klein, starts getting worried about the kicks, and win this on the card. So I will say UD for Bahamondes.
Omar, go.
Yeah, I think Bahamondes is just I think he's a more dynamic striker overall, a more dynamic fighter. I really enjoyed his last few performances. Obviously, the one that got him a little bit of notoriety, I think more than any of them, was the Roosevelt Roberts fight, where he spinning back kicked that kid right in his face. And Roosevelt Roberts, who has actually been doing pretty well on The Ultimate Fighter so far. I know he recently lost, I think, in the last couple episodes or whatever, but he was doing pretty well up until that point. I'm sure we'll see him back in the UFC sooner rather than later now. But Bahamondes is a really good fighter, man, and he's got really nice technique. He looks really good when he's fighting. I have a little bit more confidence in him overall to get it done. So I'm going to go Bahamondes here. I do think he can catch Ludovit Klein, and I think he can put him out. So I'm going to go with Bahamondes by KO round 3.
I like that pick a lot. Striking prowess plus size. I'm going to go with Bahamondes as well. He's a bit of a knockout machine, man, with nine knockouts. He's a finisher. There's probably going to be some fireworks in this fight, man, because Klein is a finisher in his own right. Only 3 of his 19 wins have gone the distance. That being said, for the reasons I stated, I will be taking Bahamondes. I'll say round 2 TKO. I don't think he's going to put him out with one shot, but I think he's going to overwhelm him with his size and with his strikes. I'll say the referee's going to have to intervene, and Bahamondes will have his hand raised. Let's go now to the light heavyweight division with Tanner Boser taking on Aleksa Camur. So, Boser, the bulldozer, the 32-year-old out of Alberta, Canada, 20-10-1 with 12 finishes, 11 of them knockouts. Very much looking to get back in the win column after losing 2 in a row to Rodrigo Nascimento and Ian Cutelaba back in April. He'll be standing across from Mr. Aleksa Camur, the 27-year-old out of Ohio. He's 6-2 as a pro, with 5 of those 6 victories coming by way of knockout. After winning on Contender Series, he won his first fight in the UFC and then had lost the next 2, so he also is looking to get back in the win column. Omar, start us off. Give us your take and your pick.
My take is this is probably the least interesting fight on the card for me. That is my take. I am not a huge fan of either guy. I've said it before. I'll continue to say it for those of you who think I'm just a hater. I like technique. I like watching guys with crisp technique and purpose behind what they're doing. I'm not a huge fan of winging sloppy shit, which you get a lot at heavyweight, which is going to happen, and I leave room for that to be the case. But a lot of times it's like watching 2 rhinos just like run into each other and just cause a massive explosion. And I think that's what you're going to get here. Just 2 guys running at each other, winging shots, just kind of seeing what happens. Tanner Boser has never struck me as a guy who's had really high-level technique, even high-level IQ when it comes to being inside of a fight. And so far from what I've seen from Camur, I would suggest very similar things. I think he's also still very, the experience it seems like he has on paper is not a ton. And I think it showed in his last couple performances against people like William Knight and Nikolai Negumereanu. We almost went into a really bad spot there. Really bad spot. But we didn't. But long story short, I don't really trust either one of these guys to win. but obviously somebody's going to have to. I'm going to go with Camur here just because I have less confidence in Boser overall, so I'll go with Camur by unanimous decision.
Bro, turn that into a clip.
I'll go while you're recovering, Mike. Boser favored -165. Camur +135 as the dog.
Okay.
1 inch of height and 1.5 inches of reach for the former heavyweight in Tanner Boser. If Boser can't beat Aleksa Camur, then I don't think this move to light heavyweight is going to be too worthwhile for him. Because to me, this is a guy he should beat. I haven't been hugely impressed with Camur as of yet. Boser, I actually think, is a pretty decent kickboxer. It may not be the prettiest, but he's fairly effective. He can wrestle if needed. He's fast on his feet. I think he should be able to score on Camur with some regularity. I can't think of the word I want to say here. The caveat, thank you, there we go. The caveat is that Camur hasn't fought in like 2 years, which obviously could be a knock on him, but also could mean that maybe he has made some big improvements. He is still a fairly young guy. So maybe we see that, and I realize that Boser was a dumb pick, but I will go with Tanner Boser to win AUD.
And I will take the opposite pick. I'm going to go with a younger prospect. According to Dominic Cruz, there's no such thing as ring rust, so fuck that. I will take Aleksa Camur. I'll say he gets the knockout win, stamping his return to the light heavyweight division. I'll say round 1 knockout. Okay, here we go. Back down in weight to the featherweight division. Does this guy say his name Lopes or Lopes? Remind me.
Lopes.
It is Lopes. Okay, Diego Lopes taking on Gavin Tucker. Lopes, the 28-year-old out of Brazil, 21-6 with 19 finishes, 11 of them submissions. Looking to get back in the win column after dropping a unanimous decision loss to Movsar Ivloyev back in May. He will be taking on Gavin Governor Tucker, the 37-year-old out of Newfoundland, Canada, 13-2 as a professional with 10 finishes, 6 of them submissions. And he's also looking to get back in the win column after losing by knockout in round 1 to Mr. Dan 50K Ige back in March of 2021. So he is 3-2 in the UFC. His first fight in the UFC was in 2017. Did not fight in 18. Fought once in 19. Fought twice in 20 when the world blew up. And then fought once in 2021 and has not fought since. Omar, why don't you start us off? Give us your take and your pick.
The fight's going to be electric for sure. Gavin Tucker's got a pace like a motherfucker. He's coming off a really bad loss against Dan Ige. Didn't even really get started in that fight for the most part. But he's a real deal. I think he's actually really, very good. And I also think that about Diego Lopes. His performance against Movsar Ivloyev on what I'm pretty sure was short notice and his UFC debut was something to remember. He lost that fight. I remember that fight being pretty close, though. I can't remember now off the top of my head exactly how close, but closer than, frankly, it should have been considering all the, the asterisks, right? The short notice and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So I was really impressed with Diego Lopes. I definitely came away wanting to know more about Diego Lopes and seeing what he has to offer with a full training camp and a proper opponent of similar caliber. And I think we're getting that with Gavin Tucker and Diego Lopes. I do think that from what I saw, Diego Lopes is fantastically well-rounded. He is, I believe, the taller fighter of the two as well, and I think that's going to play a big part in this fight considering how well Diego Lopes uses his striking and his range. But if it goes down to the ground, as good as Gavin Tucker is, I still have more faith in Lopes to get things done and to be able to defend himself and even reverse things. So I'm going to go with Lopes here. I think both of them are nasty. I don't know if this is going to become a finish. I'm going to go with Lopes here by decision.
Mark?
Diego Lopes is actually the favorite here, despite obviously being the less proven fighter at this level. He is minus 170. Gavin Tucker is plus 140 on the other side. 5 inches of height and a 6-inch reach advantage for Diego Lopes. So pretty big. He is significantly larger than Gavin Tucker. Gavin Tucker hasn't fought in 2.5 years, as alluded to. He had some injuries that he dealt with. He's now 37 years old. All that said, he is good. He is a guy who tapped Sung Woo Choi. He won a decision over Billy Q, which is legit. But I'm just not sure if returning from that long of a layoff at this big of a size disadvantage against a guy who we know is a dog in Diego Lopes is the right combination for a victory here. Lopes, as Omar walked you through, put on a show. In his loss to Movsar Evloev, he did lose the fight, but it was definitely a competitive fight. And it's hard for me not to roll with him here. It just feels like he got the right matchup to shine, potentially, and I am going to say that he taps Gavin Tucker out in the second round.
Hell yeah, I'm here for that shit.
Love that. Love the points you guys all made. When Diego Lopes came out against Evloev, I was super impressed by him. And yes, Tucker is very good, but the inactivity is big for me in this case. Ring rust is a real thing. So I'm also going to go Lopes, and I'll say that he. Thank you. I'll say that he also gets him out of there by submission. I'll say he gets him out of there by submission in the third round, which would be handing Gavin Tucker his first submission loss. So there you have it.
Yeah. I almost didn't pick it, but I was like, fuck it.
Hey, the law of averages catches up to everybody. Okay, in the light heavyweight division, Dustin Jacoby taking on Kennedy Nzechukwu. So Dustin, the Haniac Jacoby, the 35-year-old out of Illinois, 18-7-1, with 12 finishes, 11 of them knockouts. Looking very much to get back in the win column. After losing back-to-back fights, both by decision, to Khalil Roundtree and Mirzakhanov. Sorry about that one. Kennedy Nzechukwu, his opponent, the African Savage. I didn't make that up. That is his nickname. The 31-year-old out of Dallas, Texas. 12-3 with 9 finishes, 8 of them knockouts. He's riding a 3-fight win streak coming into this weekend, looking to keep things rolling. Mark, start us off.
All right, guys. Africa is a continent. It's not a country. I don't know if you guys know that.
What?
You don't remember that comment that we got?
Oh, I remember it. I was being hella facetious just then.
Thanks. We're aware. Thanks for the heads up. Oh, man. Anyway, a little inside joke for the boys. Odds. Kennedy Nzechukwu minus 160 as the favorite. Dustin Jacoby plus 130, so pretty close. 2 inches of height, 7 inches of reach for Kennedy Nzechukwu. A lot of height and reach, huge advantages on this card. It's got to be like the number one card ever for height and reach difference, because I feel like I've been saying this for every single fight. But I like...
Dude, this is like
fucking happen
how many
every
times
week?
in a row? Oh. Come back.
Well, we can't leave. We have to let it fully upload.
It'll upload. Just leave. Okay. Bye.
Okay. I think that Dustin Jacoby is a really great test to gauge where Nzechukwu is at right now, specifically to gauge the improvements. Let's cough that out. Specifically to gauge the improvements that he has made in his striking, because Kennedy is making notable improvements each time out, But Dustin Jacoby is a really high-level striker. To me, the question becomes maybe whether Kennedy's improvements in the wrestling could actually be a factor in this fight. Could he take Jacoby down to avoid the striking, or will he be comfortable there? I don't know. I'm very intrigued to see what route Nzechukwu decides to take. I do think this will take place mostly on the feet. I think Jacoby will probably be winning more moment to moment just by virtue of being the more skilled kickboxer. But, man, that 7-inch reach advantage is a lot, and it may be something that allows a few big shots to land for Kennedy that kind of changes things in these exchanges. So I could see a real close fight here, even a fight where we end up debating the winner. I feel like Dustin Jacoby ends up in fights like that at times. I don't know who I want to take. I'm going to say Nzechukwu split decision.
You think it goes to the scorecards, huh? Take it away.
Yeah, I've really been into the performances of Kennedy and Nzechukwu as of late. Justin Jacoby is always a gamer, always down to fight. Is definitely somebody who you can't count out throughout an entire fight, regardless of who's winning, on the scorecards or not. I just think Nzechukwu has found something. He seems like he's in a real level of comfort right now. It seems like the shots are coming easier to him. He seems to be flowing a lot better. Jacoby's, at least when we compare their comfort level, it doesn't seem like Jacoby has that same comfort, for lack of a better word. I can't really think of anything else to say, but Nzechukwu's just looked really good, man, and I'm pretty sold on his last few performances. They've been against guys, who we could argue, their level and whatever else, and Ian Cutelaba and Carl Roberson and Devin Clark and all that stuff. But the reality is, even in those fights, just looking at Nzechukwu by himself, he looked good. He looked like he had a real handle on his skills. So I have more confidence in him at this point. I picked Justin Jacoby in his last fight. It did not go my way, so I'm going to stick with Nzechukwu in this one. And I think he ends up finishing him. I think that Jacoby fights a little too dirty, a little too messy for something crazy not to land from either one of them. So I'm going to go Nzechukwu by KO here, round 2.
Yeah, this is a very, very tough fight to pick. Both guys are big strikers. They both have only been knocked out once themselves, but I do feel like this is not going to go the distance, and it's just going to be a matter of who hurts who first. And I'm going to roll the dice with the guy who's on the winning streak, and I'm going to say that he keeps it going. Also, obviously, his size advantages are going to play a big part, or could play a big part. So I'll say Nzechukwu catches Jacoby first and gets him out of there. I'll say in the second round. All right, co-main event time. Jessica Andrade taking on Tatiana Suarez. So, Jessica Bate-Estaca Andrade, the 31-year-old out of Prana, Brazil, 24-11 as a pro, with 17 finishes, 9 of them knockouts. She has found herself on the losing end of 2 consecutive bouts, looking to get back in the win column. And she will be sitting across from the rising star, Tatiana Suarez, 32 years old, out of Covina, California, undefeated, 9-0, with 6 finishes, 4 of them submissions. Most recently, guillotining Montana De La Rosa back in February of this year. Mark, I'll let you go first, since you have seemed in the past to be on the Suarez train here. What are you thinking? Taking on the living legend here, the active, somewhat of a legend, Jessica Andrade.
Yeah, the bookies are on the train as well. Suarez is minus 380. Jessica Andrade is plus 280. 4 inches of height and 4 inches of reach for Suarez. And, God, I love Jessica Andrade, but this is just not the opponent to be stepping in against when you've just lost 2 in a row. Tatiana Suarez is great. I mean, she is really, really, really good. She's undefeated. She's 9-0. She will wrestle you into dust. She's nasty and looking for finishes on the ground, whether it's with strikes or submissions. And as much as Andrade is, like a little tank, I just don't think she's going to be able to resist what Tatiana Suarez brings to the table. I think the best bet for Andrade is probably to try to play a super in-and-out speed game and just connect on something flush. But if that doesn't happen early, it can only work for so long without Suarez finding a way to get a hold of her. And I think Suarez will, and I think she finishes Jessica again, unfortunately. I will say round 2 subs, Tatiana Suarez.
Omar?
I think this is probably the worst matchup that Jessica Andrade could have found herself in. Trying to come back and get a win. Tatiana Suarez seems like she was tailor-made to beat somebody like a Jessica Andrade, right? Physicality between the two of them, and Andrade is a fucking solid woman. That girl is all muscle. I can tell you that from experience. She is one of the hardest human beings I have ever laid my hands on. With all that being said,
tell the people who are
Tatiana
listening
Suarez
how you
is
know
true.
this, because it's out of context. It sounds a little creepy.
Oh. Sure. So I went to the UFC Expo a couple years ago now. I think it was 2020. Actually, no. It was 2022. It was 2022.
I was saying, it was
summer of 2022. Wife and I went over there and we did a meet and greet with a couple of different fighters throughout the weekend, and Jessica Andrade was one of them. She gave me and the wife a hug, and in that hug, I felt, like I said, probably one of the most solid human beings I've ever laid my hands on. It was surprising. I did not expect her to just be that strong in a cordial hug. Tatiana Suarez, however, is a beast, man, and she's tall. She is very, very strong in her own right, and the girl knows how to wrestle and wrestle at an elite level. I don't see it, man. I don't see how Jessica Andrade wins this fight in any stretch of the imagination. It's very possible she can land something somewhere along the line, puncher's chance, if you will. But I think this fight is made specifically for Tatiana Suarez to rise and really to shine at this point and really get her on the way to gold. So I'm going to go with Tatiana Suarez here, and I think she does finish her, man. I'm going to go with submission round 2.
Let's go. Yeah, I agree. We are in unison here. I'm going to take the rising star, Tatiana Suarez, also by submission. And I'll say mid round 2. Mid-round 2. I was either going to say end of round 1, she might get her in trouble. But then I think Andrade might survive. And then mid-round 2, we'll see Suarez do what she does best. I think she's gonna bully Andrade down to the mat and go to work. And we're going to get at her. She's going to find a tap. Okay, main event time. UFC Fight Night. Sandhagen versus Font. Cory, the Sandman Sandhagen. By the way, bantamweight bout of some consequence here. Cory Sandhagen, the 31-year-old out of Aurora, Colorado. 16-4 with 10 finishes, 7 of them knockouts. Coming off back-to-back wins over Yadong Song and Marlon Chito Vera back in March of this year. Rob Font, the 36-year-old out of Boston, Massachusetts, 20-6 with 13 finishes, 9 of them knockouts. Coming off of a knockout victory over Adrian Yanez back in April. Omar, the floor is yours first. Give us your take and your pick of Cory Sandhagen versus Rob Font.
Man, this is such a good fight. I'm a big fan of Rob Font. I'm a big fan of Cory Sandhagen. Rob Font's style of fighting is a very high-paced, very energetic way of fighting. He likes to stay on the outside. He likes to box. He likes to throw his kicks when available. But he's trying to piece you up, and he's trying not to get hit at the same time. Doesn't always work as perfectly, but that is the goal. Cory Sandhagen is really the type of fighter to try and lay a lot of traps. Very good at kind of adjusting on the fly to different situations and using his well-rounded skill set to kind of be at an advantage no matter where he is. Obviously, that gets more difficult as the opponents get more difficult. I just think he's been in there with overall better talent that it is difficult for me to think that he is going to lose against Rob Font. And I say that, again, as a very big fan of Rob Font. I think he's a very, very good fighter. I just think this is one of those moments where I think Cory Sandhagen is just a level above. I'd be very down to see Rob Font prove me wrong. I just don't really see it. Cory Sandhagen is, like I said, very well-rounded, trains with a ton of killers. I don't know if you guys saw the picture of him training with a bunch of guys, but like he's training with Matt Brown right now, TJ Dillashaw, Brandon Thatch from way back when, Drew Dober, Neil Magny, Curtis Blades. I mean, he's got a murderer's row of guys that he's training with right now, on top of the fact that I already thought he was very good. And if you look at a lot of the fights that he's won in dramatic fashion, these are all fights where he lays traps and guys walk right into them. And Rob Font, I think, can sometimes get on his bike a little bit too much where he may be kind of an autopilot kind of mode. And I think against somebody like Cory Sandhagen, who's consistently making reads and adjusting and calculating, I just think he runs into something stupid somewhere along the line. So I'm going to go with Cory Sandhagen here. I think he gets him out in the 4th round, TKO.
I'll go next. I will also be going with Cory Sandhagen. Props to Rob Font for stepping in on short notice. The guy is a gamer, super talented, and his record reflects that. I mean, 20-6, my God. Yeah, I just think that Cory is the more cerebral fighter, the more lethal fighter overall. I love what you said, Omar. Yes, I agree. I think Cory does like to lay traps. Think of that flying knee that he landed on Frankie Edgar. I think he's going to punish Rob Font, man. But Rob Font is also a super durable guy. So for that reason, I'll say that Rob Font gets to the end of the 5th round, and we see Cory Sandhagen get his hand raised by a unanimous decision on the judges' scorecards. Mark, bring us home, buddy.
All right, Cory is favored at -330. Rob Font is plus 250. 3 inches of height for Cory, but 1.5 inches in the reach department for Rob Font. Of course, we were supposed to see Cory versus Umar Nurmagomedov here, which would have been really interesting, but Rob Font is definitely a quality replacement that we got. So thanks for that to him. He looked fantastic taking out Adrian Yanez in his last fight. But to maybe put it a little more bluntly than I guess you guys did, I just don't think he's on the same level as Cory Sandhagen. I'm not saying Cory's going to run him over or anything because Rob Font is tough as hell. But I just think Cory's better everywhere. I think he's the cleaner and sharper striker. The kicks will be a weapon for him. The clinch work, knees in the clinch, elbows. And even through all that, if Rob Font's boxing, specifically his jab, is causing Cory any problems, then I think Cory can look for the takedown. We saw him show off the wrestling against Song Yadong. I think we may see him go that route at times again here, and I'm going to roll with him. My question is really just whether I think he can get the finish. Torn on that, but Font is a tough dude. So I will just say it is either going to be a very clear 49-46 or a shutout 50-45 in favor of Cory Sandhagen.
Nice. All right, boys, we did it.